What's up guys, it's Kristen here today with my review of In Order to Live, a North Korean Girl's Journey to Freedom by Yeonmi Park. Now, I'm sure you can glean from the title that this is of course Yeonmi's memoir about her life growing up in North Korea and her eventual escape from it. She has become a very widely known human rights activist in the last few years and speaks out a lot about her experiences in North Korea and the horrors that are happening to the population today still. But the one thing that she never wanted to really talk about was the 2 years that she spent in China after her escape and before she made it to South Korea. And she never talked about the fact that she fell into the hands of human traffickers for those 2 years. And so in her memoir, she is of course talking about her childhood and what life was like in North Korea, which clearly we do not hear about very often because they are so cut off from the rest of the world. And she also talks about those years spent in China, but also the difficult adjustment that she had when she eventually did make it to South Korea. I have read very few memoirs in my life, and I actually tend to steer very clear of them because I am a very sensitive person and it is difficult for me reading about something that is not a story, that was somebody's life, and reading about all of the difficulties that they went through and imagining that there are millions of other people going through the same thing, it can really affect me. So I told myself picking this up that if it was too much for me that I could just put it down and stop reading it and I wouldn't feel bad about it. But luckily that was not the case. I could not put this book down. I was so engrossed in her story. I had to find out what happened next, and in the end I was crying, but it was tears of happiness that after everything she went through, and in the end she did find freedom and she did find success and she is living a very beautiful life now. And I think that part of the reason that it wasn't as difficult for me to read through those traumatic times that she went through is because the way that she writes, she will talk about all of these horrific events that she witnessed throughout her life and state them very plainly, does not try to gloss over them at all. But at the same time, she does not go into extensive detail about every moment. As a reader, I really appreciate that because my mind definitely will fill in all of the blanks when she talks about scenes of rape, when she talks about being captured by the police or seeing dead bodies in the streets. I can imagine what would be going through her mind at that moment. I can imagine the terror, and she also does a really good job of explaining her mindset as a North Korean who has been cut off from the world and her emotional state at the time, that you can understand that she might view something in a different way than you would. Like when she explains the conditions of her life in North Korea, you can read it and think, how horrible is that? But she really does a good job of explaining that because she didn't know anything different and they were so obviously cut off from the outside world, that it didn't seem quite as bad to her. And on the topic of what life is like in North Korea, the closest I could compare it to would be George Orwell's 1984, and it's really interesting though because after she escaped and was in South Korea and started reading more literature, she said that reading George Orwell struck such a chord with her because she felt like that was the first time that she read an author who understood what she came from, which is terrifying in a whole other light. The thing that I think surprised me most about her story is how in the beginning, her wanting to escape from North Korea, it wasn't necessarily about getting freedom from the government or freedom to live her life the way that she wanted to. It was all about getting enough food to eat. Because for most of her life, she was literally on the brink of starvation along with many other North Koreans, millions of whom died from it. And so even when she first gets to China and witnesses horrors and realizes how bad their situation is, a woman puts this massive bowl of rice in front of her, and it's the most food she's ever seen that she could eat all on her own. And she just kind of blocks out everything bad that's happening because all she can think about is that she is finally getting to eat, she is finally getting food. Which is one of the ways that the government of North Korea really keeps their people down. Other than using the military, how on earth would people ever organize to form a rebellion or an uprising when all you can think about is that you're not eating and you don't know when you're going to get your next meal? And another reason I think that it wasn't quite as traumatic for me to read is because she does focus on these little moments when people did show kindness to her, that they went out of their way and even risked their own lives in order to help her. And I love that the title, In Order to Live, is this constant thread throughout the whole book, that she really was willing to do anything in order to get freedom. And a lot of times that meant making great sacrifices and giving up her own humanity, but she says that this is the story of the choices I made in order to live. And I think this is a really important read for everyone. Most people's knowledge of North Korea is extremely limited for obvious reasons, and they always just seem to be the butt of every political joke with the crazy hairstyles and the nutjob leaders, which of course they are. But you need to understand how they got to that point in this day and age. And more importantly, what the people of North Korea, like Yamni, are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. There are still thousands of North Koreans who are attempting to escape, but they cannot get refugee status from neighboring China, which is supposed to be an international law, but they do not follow that. And in the end, it never feels like she wrote this story so that people would feel sorry for her or anything like that. I truly felt inspired by her story and felt like if she could overcome these massive obstacles, then I can overcome anything in my life. So despite all of the horrible things that life has thrown at her that you have just read about, it leaves off on this note of hopefulness. I cannot recommend this book enough. I am truly blown away by her story and how it affected me. I don't think I will ever forget it. I want to research more about her. So I would love to hear from you guys in the comments if anybody has read this book, or do you have the same feelings as I do, that you get nervous about reading nonfiction or memoirs? So please leave some of your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!